Far away in the vastness of space, beyond the reach of Earth's telescopes and satellites, there existed a world unlike any other. This planet, home to the Veilons, was a place of wonder and beauty. Its skies shimmered with colors no human eye had ever seen, and its forests glowed softly under twin suns. The Veilons themselves were an advanced species, peaceful by nature, who valued knowledge and art above all else. They had built towering cities that blended seamlessly with their environment, creating harmony between technology and nature. But now, that harmony was shattered. A shadow had fallen over their world, a relentless and unstoppable force known as the Skarn. These creatures were not like anything the Veilons had encountered before. They were part machine, part organism, and entirely deadly. Their bodies gleamed with metallic plates and sharp edges, while their movements were swift and precise. Worst of all, they seemed to have no purpose except destruction. Wherever the Skarn went, life vanished. Forests turned to ash, rivers dried up, and cities crumbled into dust. The Veilons tried to fight back. At first, they used their own weapons, energy, beams and plasma cannons, but these proved useless against the Skarn's thick armor. Then they attempted diplomacy, sending messages to the swarm in hopes of finding some way to reason with it. But the Skarn did not respond. They simply kept coming, wave after wave, until even the bravest warriors among the Veilons began to lose. Hope, desperation took hold. If the Veilons could not stop the Skarn on their own, perhaps someone else could. Gathering what remained of their resources, they sent out a distress signal across the stars. It was a gamble. The Veilons had never communicated with beings outside their galaxy before. There was no guarantee anyone would hear them or care enough to help. Still, it was their only chance. Light years away, on a small blue planet called Earth, the message finally reached its destination. Humanity, though young compared to many other civilizations, had been exploring the cosmos for decades. Satellites orbiting Earth scanned the heavens constantly, searching for signs of intelligent life. One such satellite picked up the Veilon transmission late one night. The signal was faint, distorted by the immense distance it had traveled, but it contained enough information to convey urgency. At the Global Space Command Center, located deep beneath the mountains of Colorado, alarms began to blare. Technicians rushed to their stations, analyzing the data streaming in from the satellite. Among them was Alex Carter, a calm and methodical man in his mid-30s. As mission coordinator, Alex was responsible for overseeing operations at the center. He had seen countless false alarms during his career, but something about this one felt different. "Bring it up on screen," Alex said, gesturing toward the main monitor. The room fell silent as the technicians worked to decode the transmission. Slowly, images appeared. Grainy footage of ruined cities, swarms of metallic insects, and desperate faces pleading for assistance. Words scrolled across the bottom of the screen, translated automatically by the command center's computers. "Help us," the message read. "Our world is dying." Standing nearby was Rachel Monroe, a scientist specializing in extraterrestrial biology. Rachel had always dreamed of encountering alien life, but she never imagined it would happen like this. Her heart raced as she watched the video, her mind racing with questions. Who were these beings? What kind of threat had driven them to seek help from strangers? And most importantly, could humanity do anything to save them? "This is real," Rachel whispered, turning to Alex. "We have to act." Alex nodded, though. He knew the decision wouldn't be easy. Humanity was still recovering from its own struggles. Climate change, political unrest, and economic instability had left the planet fragile. Sending aid to another galaxy required resources Earth could scarcely spare. Yet ignoring the plea felt wrong. For centuries, humans had looked to the stars, wondering if they were alone. Now here was proof that they weren't, and an opportunity to prove themselves worthy of joining the galactic community. The matter was brought before the United Nations Space Council, a governing body tasked with making decisions about humanity's role in space exploration. After hours of debate, the Council reached a unanimous decision. Earth would respond to the Veilon's call for help. But how? Conventional armies and weapons would likely fail against whatever horrors awaited them in the Veilon system. Instead, they turned to their most unconventional asset, the Sentinels. The Sentinels were unlike anything else in existence. Created through years of genetic engineering, they were living organisms designed specifically for combat. Each Sentinel was based on Earth's apex predators, lions, wolves, eagles, and more, but enhanced with traits that made them nearly invincible. Their muscles were stronger, their senses sharper, and their instincts honed to perfection. Some were even capable of adapting to extreme environments, from scorching deserts to freezing tundras. Commander Ethan Hayes was chosen to lead the mission. A tall, broad-shouldered man with piercing gray eyes, Ethan had spent his entire adult life in the military. Known for his strategic brilliance and unshakable resolve, he was exactly the kind of leader needed for such a dangerous undertaking. Though he rarely showed emotion, those close to him knew he carried the weight of every decision on his shoulders. Ethan assembled a team of experts to accompany him on the journey. In addition to Rachel and Alex, he included Mia Dawson, a skilled pilot whose quick reflexes had saved countless lives during training exercises. Together, they formed the core of what would become Earth's first intergalactic rescue mission. Preparations began immediately. The Starship Odyssey, humanity's fastest and most advanced vessel, was outfitted with everything the crew might need. Supplies were loaded, systems checked, and contingency plans drawn up. Meanwhile, the Sentinels were prepared for transport. Massive crates lined the ship's cargo bay, each containing one of the fearsome creatures. Even sedated, they radiated power and menace, their glowing eyes hinting at the ferocity within. As launch day approached, the team gathered aboard the Odyssey for a final briefing. Ethan stood at the front of the room, addressing his crew with quiet authority. "This mission won't be easy," he said, his voice steady. "We're going into unknown territory to face an enemy we don't understand. But we owe it to ourselves and to the Veilons to try. Let's make Earth proud." With those words, the engines roared to life, and the Odyssey lifted off from Earth's surface. Below them, the planet grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared, entirely, replaced by the infinite blackness of space. Ahead lay a journey fraught with danger, uncertainty, and the promise of discovery. Humanity had taken its first step toward becoming something greater than itself. Whether it would succeed or fail remained to be seen. For now, all they could do was press forward, guided by the faint hope that their efforts might make a difference. Somewhere out there, in a distant corner of the universe, a dying civilization waited for salvation. And Earth had answered their call, not with armies or machines, but with the raw, untamed power of its greatest creations. The journey to the Veilon system was long and perilous. Space, vast and unforgiving, held countless dangers that tested the crew of the Odyssey every step of the way. The ship's systems hummed steadily as it traveled at incredible speeds, but even the most advanced technology couldn't shield them from the hazards of deep space. Asteroid fields loomed like minefields, radiation storms threatened to fry their instruments, and gravitational anomalies pulled at the ship with invisible hands. Each day brought new challenges, and each challenge pushed the crew closer to their limits. Mia Dawson, the ship's pilot, spent hours in the cockpit, her fingers dancing over the controls with practiced precision. She had trained for years to handle situations exactly like this, but nothing could fully prepare her for the reality of navigating through such treacherous terrain. Her focus never wavered, even when alarms blared or warning lights flashed across the dashboard. Steady, she muttered to herself, guiding the Odyssey through a narrow gap between two massive asteroids. The ship shuddered as debris scraped against its hull, but Mia kept her cool. "We're clear," she announced, letting out a breath. She hadn't realized she'd been holding. In the command center, Alex Carter monitored the ship's systems, ensuring everything ran smoothly. He worked tirelessly, double-checking readings and running diagnostics to catch any potential issues before they became problems. Despite his calm demeanor, Alex couldn't shake the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. If something went wrong, it would be on him to fix it, or face the consequences. Still, he reminded himself why they were doing this. It wasn't just about saving the Valens. It was about proving that humanity could rise to the occasion when it mattered. Most Rachel Monroe, meanwhile, spent much of her time studying the data they had received from the Valons. She pored over images and videos of the Skarn, analyzing their behavior and trying to understand how they operated. The more she learned, the more uneasy she felt. These creatures weren't just mindless beasts. They were highly efficient killing machines designed to destroy without mercy. Their hive-like structure suggested they acted as one entity, controlled by a central intelligence. If that was true, then targeting the leader might be the only way to stop them. But finding and defeating, it would be no easy task. Commander. Ethan Hayes kept a close eye on his team, offering words of encouragement when needed, but mostly letting them focus on their tasks. He knew morale was crucial during missions like this, especially when the stakes were so high. To keep spirits up, he organized regular check-ins where everyone could share their thoughts and concerns. During one such meeting, Mia voiced her frustration with the constant obstacles they faced. "It feels like the universe doesn't want us to get there," she said, leaning back in her chair. Ethan nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe it doesn't," he replied, "but we're here anyway. That says something about us, doesn't it?" His words resonated with the team, reminding them of the determination that had brought them this far. They weren't just representing themselves, they were representing all of humanity. Giving up wasn't an option. Weeks passed, and the crew began to notice subtle changes in their surroundings. The stars seemed brighter, their light tinged with unfamiliar colors. Strange energy readings appeared on the ship's scanners, hinting at phenomena beyond human comprehension. Rachel theorized they were approaching the edge of their galaxy, where the laws of physics might behave differently. "We're entering uncharted territory," she told the others, her voice filled with equal parts excitement and apprehension. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the Valon system came into view. The sight was breathtaking. Dozens of planets orbited a massive star, their surfaces glowing faintly in hues of blue, green, and gold. But it was the homeworld that captured everyone's attention. Once vibrant and alive, it now looked desolate and scarred. Thick clouds of smoke choked the atmosphere, and entire continents lay buried beneath layers of ash. The devastation was worse than anything they had imagined. As the Odyssey descended toward the planet's surface, the crew braced themselves for what awaited them. They landed near one of the few remaining settlements, a cluster of underground bunkers hidden beneath rocky terrain. Outside, the air was thick with dust, making it difficult to see more than a few feet ahead. Armed with protective suits and portable scanners, the team stepped onto alien soil for the first time. They were greeted by Kale, the leader of the surviving Valons. Tall and slender, with skin that shimmered faintly in the dim light, Kale exuded an air of quiet dignity despite the horrors his people had endured. His eyes widened slightly as he took in the humans before him, clearly surprised by their appearance. Through a translator device, he thanked them for coming and explained the situation in greater detail. "The Skarn are unlike anything you've ever faced," Kyle warned. "They consume everything, resources, life, even memories. Nothing is safe." from them. He described how the swarm operated under the control of a queen, a monstrous being hidden deep within their territory. Destroying her was the only way to end the invasion, but reaching her would require navigating a labyrinth of traps and defenses designed to protect her at all costs. Ethan listened intently, weighing their options. The mission was already risky, but this added another layer of complexity. Still, he didn't hesitate. "We'll do whatever it takes," he promised, his tone firm yet respectful. Back aboard the Odyssey, the team prepared to deploy the Sentinels. Massive crates containing the creatures were carefully unloaded and placed near the entrance to the Skarn's territory. One by one, the Sentinels were awakened from their sedation, their glowing eyes snapping open as they came to life. The largest of them, a feline-like beast named Shadow, stretched lazily before fixing his gaze on Ethan. His claws flexed instinctively, ready for action. Rachel watched nervously as the Sentinels prowled around, testing their surroundings. Though genetically engineered for combat, these creatures were still unpredictable. Their instincts drove them to hunt and kill, and there was always a chance they might turn on their handlers if provoked. "Are you sure about this?" she asked Ethan, her voice tinged with doubt. "We don't have a choice," Ethan replied, though his expression betrayed his own unease. "If we can't trust them, we're finished." With the Sentinels ready, the team set out toward the heart of the Skarn hive. The journey was slow and painstaking as they had to navigate treacherous terrain littered with traps and ambushes. At one point, Blaze, a fiery reptilian sentinel capable of breathing plasma, triggered a tripwire, causing a cascade of boulders to crash down behind them. The noise attracted a swarm of Skarn drones, forcing the team to take cover while the Sentinels fought them off. Despite the chaos, the creatures proved invaluable. Shadow leaped effortlessly between rocks, tearing through drones with razor-sharp claws, while Blaze unleashed streams of molten fire that incinerated anything in his path. Watching them in action was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. For every enemy they destroyed, however, more seemed to appear, relentless and unyielding. As night fell, or what passed for night on this ruined world, the team set up camp in a shallow cave. Exhausted but determined, they reviewed their progress and planned their next move. The Queen's lair was still miles away, guarded by increasingly formidable defenses. But with each step forward, they grew closer to their goal. Rachel stared out at the desolate landscape, her mind racing with possibilities. Humanity had ventured farther than ever before, answering a call for help from beings they barely understood. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain. Earth's response would change the course of history, for better or worse. The next morning, the air was thick with tension as the team prepared to continue their journey. The Sentinels had proven themselves invaluable during the previous day's skirmishes, but everyone knew the challenges ahead would only grow more dangerous. The closer they got to the Skarn Queen's lair, the stronger and more numerous her drones became. Every step forward felt like walking into a trap, yet turning back wasn't an option. The Valens were counting on them. Ethan gathered the team for a quick briefing before setting out. "We stick together," he said firmly, his gray eyes scanning each face. "The Sentinels will lead the way, but we stay close enough to support them if needed. If anyone sees something suspicious, anything at all, you call it out immediately." He paused, letting his words sink in. "This is it. We're getting close." With that, the group moved forward, following Shadow and Blaze as they sniffed the air and prowled ahead. The terrain grew rougher the deeper they ventured, jagged rocks and deep crevices making every step treacherous. Mia carried a portable scanner, keeping an eye out for hidden traps or energy signatures that might indicate danger. Alex stayed near the back, ready to patch up injuries if necessary, while Rachel kept watch over the Sentinels, ensuring they remained focused on their mission. It wasn't long before they encountered their first major obstacle, a wide canyon. spanned by a fragile-looking bridge made of twisted metal and stone. On either side, the walls dropped hundreds of feet into darkness. Mia stepped forward cautiously, testing the bridge's stability with her boot. "It looks sturdy enough," she said, though her voice betrayed her uncertainty. "But we'll need to cross one at a time." Ethan nodded. "Shadow goes first," he decided. "If it holds him, it should hold us." The massive feline-like creature padded onto the bridge without hesitation, his weight causing the structure to groan ominously. Everyone held their breath as he crossed safely to the other side. One by one, the rest of the team followed, moving, slowly and carefully. Just as Mia reached the midpoint, a loud crack echoed through the canyon. She froze, her heart pounding as a section of the bridge crumbled beneath her feet. "Jump!" Ethan shouted, his voice cutting through the panic. Without thinking, Mia leaped forward, landing hard on the far side of the bridge just as the rest collapsed into the abyss below. For a moment, no one spoke, the sound of falling debris fading into silence. Then Ethan broke the quiet. "Good job, Mia," he said, offering her a hand to help her up. She nodded, brushing dust off her suit, trying to steady her breathing. Once everyone was safely across, they pressed onward, knowing they couldn't afford any more delays. The path ahead narrowed into a winding tunnel carved into the rock, its walls slick with moisture and glowing faintly with bioluminescent fungi. The air inside was cool but heavy, carrying the faint metallic scent of the scarn. Every so often, the distant hum of machinery could be heard, growing louder as they advanced. Suddenly, Blaze stopped in his tracks, his head snapping toward a dark alcove. His nostrils flared, and a low growl rumbled in his throat. Before anyone could react, a swarm of Scarn drones burst from the shadows, their razor-sharp limbs glinting in the dim light. Shadow sprang into action immediately, pouncing on the nearest drone and tearing it apart with savage efficiency. Blaze unleashed a torrent of plasma fire, incinerating several others in seconds. But the drones kept coming, swarming around the team like insects. "Take cover!" Ethan yelled, pulling Rachel behind a rocky outcrop. Alex scrambled to grab a handheld blaster, firing bursts of energy at the advancing horde. Mia crouched nearby, using her scanner to pinpoint weak spots in the drone's armor. "Aim for their joints!" she called out, her voice strained but clear. "That's where they're vulnerable." The fight was chaotic and brutal. Despite their training and weapons, the humans struggled to keep up with the sheer number of drones. It was the Sentinels who turned the tide, their raw power unmatched by anything the Scarn could throw at them. Shadow moved like lightning, his claws slicing through metal and flesh alike, while Blaze roared with fury, his fiery breath, reducing entire groups of drones to ash. When the last drone fell, the team stood panting, covered in soot and sweat. The narrow tunnel was littered with scorched remains, the air thick with smoke and the acrid smell of burnt metal. "Everyone okay?" Ethan asked, his eyes sweeping over the group. Nods came in response, though no one spoke. They were shaken, but alive, and still determined to push forward. After regrouping, they continued down the tunnel, which eventually opened into a vast cavern. The sight that greeted them was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Towering structures of organic material stretched upward, pulsating with a sickly green light. Strange tendrils writhed along the walls, connecting everything like veins in a living organism. In the center of the cavern stood what appeared to be a massive nest, surrounded by layers of protective barriers. This was it, the Queen's lair. Rachel studied the scene intently, her mind racing. "Those barriers are probably designed to keep intruders out," she said, pointing to the shimmering force field surrounding the nest. "We'll need to disable them somehow before the Sentinels can get close to the Queen." Ethan frowned. "Any ideas?" Mia stepped forward, holding up her scanner. "I think I can find a weak point," she said confidently. "Give me a few minutes." As she worked, the others kept watch, their weapons at the ready. The silence in the cavern was oppressive, broken only by the occasional twitch of movement from the organic walls. It felt as though the hive itself was alive, watching and waiting. Finally, Mia straightened, pointing to a cluster of glowing nodes embedded in the wall. "There," she said. "If we target those, it should bring the barriers down." Ethan nodded. "Shadow, Blaze, take out those nodes. We'll cover you." The two sentinels charged forward, their movements swift and precise. Shadow leaped onto the wall, clawing at the nodes with ferocious strength, while Blaze blasted them. With streams of plasma, sparks flew as the barriers flickered and began to collapse. Behind them, the team fired at any Skarn drones that tried to interfere, keeping the creatures at bay. Just as the final barrier fell, a deafening roar shook the cavern. From the depths of the nest emerged the queen herself, a grotesque amalgamation of flesh and machine. Her body was enormous, easily dwarfing even the largest sentinel, and her insectoid features were both alien and horrifying. Multiple legs clicked against the ground as she moved, and her segmented tail lashed violently behind her. Above her head, a crown-like structure pulsed with energy, radiating waves of power. "She's huge," Mia whispered, her voice trembling. "That's our target," Ethan said grimly. "Let's finish this." The battle that followed was unlike anything the team had faced before. The queen attacked with relentless ferocity, her claws and tails striking with incredible speed and force. Shadow dodged her attacks with agility, darting in to slash at her armored hide, while Blaze unleashed wave after wave of plasma fire. But the queen's defenses were formidable, and her counterattacks devastating. A single swipe of her tail sent Blaze flying backward, slamming into a wall with a sickening thud. "No!" Rachel cried, rushing to the injured sentinel. Blaze's body twitched weakly, his fiery glow dimming as he struggled to rise. Rachel knelt beside him, her hands trembling as she examined his wounds. "He's hurt bad," she said, looking up at Ethan. "We have to pull him back." Ethan hesitated, torn between protecting his team and finishing the mission. Finally, he nodded. "Alex, Mia, get Blaze out of here. Shadow and I will handle the queen." As Alex and Mia dragged Blaze away from the fray, Ethan focused on the task at hand. Shadow circled the queen, drawing her attention while Ethan searched for a weakness. His eyes landed on a glowing node embedded in her chest, a vulnerable spot, just like Rachel had described earlier. If they could hit that, it might be enough to bring her down. "Shadow!" Ethan shouted, pointing to the node. "Distract her!" The feline-like creature lunged at the queen, sinking his claws into her side. Roaring in pain, she thrashed wildly, giving Ethan the opening he needed. Pulling out a portable EMP device, he sprinted toward her, dodging her attacks as best he could. Time seemed to slow as he reached the base of her torso, activating the device with a press of a button. A surge of electromagnetic energy coursed through the queen's body, causing her to convulse violently. For a moment, it seemed like it might work. But then the queen recovered. Her rage redoubled. With a shriek of fury, she swiped at Ethan, sending him sprawling to the ground. Shadow leaped to his defense, tackling the queen and buying precious seconds for Ethan to recover. Summoning every ounce of strength, Ethan climbed back to his feet and hurled himself at the queen once more. This time, he managed to jam the EMP device directly into the glowing node. The effect was immediate. The queen let out an ear-splitting scream as her body began to break apart, chunks of metal and flesh detaching and falling to the ground. With one final, earth-shaking roar, she collapsed, her massive form crumbling into lifeless debris. The cavern fell silent, the only sound the faint hum of dying machinery. Ethan sank to his knees, exhaustion washing over him. Shadow limped over, his fur singed and his body battered, but alive. Together, they watched as the remnants of the hive dissolved around them, the Skarn drones disintegrating. The destruction of the Skarn Queen brought an eerie calm to the cavern. The glowing organic walls dimmed, their pulsating light fading into a dull gray. The hum of machinery that had filled the air for so long was now silent, replaced by an almost unnatural stillness. It was as if the entire hive had been holding its breath, and now it exhaled one final time before collapsing entirely. Ethan rose slowly to his feet, every muscle in his body aching from the battle. His uniform was torn and covered in soot, but he didn't care. All that mattered was that they had won. Shadow stood beside him, his massive frame trembling slightly as he recovered from the fight. The Sentinel's golden eyes scanned the cavern, ensuring no threats remained. For once, there were none. "Let's get out of here," Ethan said, his voice hoarse but firm. He turned to check on the others. Alex and Mia were tending to Blaze, who lay motionless on the ground. Rachel knelt beside them, her hands hovering nervously over the injured creature. "How is he?" Ethan asked as he approached. "He's alive," Rachel replied, relief evident in her tone, but barely. "We need to get him back to the ship right away." Mia nodded, already working to stabilize Blaze with medical supplies from her pack. "We'll carry him," she said, glancing at Alex. Together, they carefully lifted the weakened Sentinel onto a makeshift stretcher. Blaze let out a low groan, his fiery glow flickering weakly, but he didn't resist. As the team prepared to leave, Ethan took one last look at the ruins of the Queen's lair. The sight was both horrifying and awe-inspiring, a testament to the power of the enemy they had just defeated. He felt a mix of pride and sorrow. They had accomplished what seemed impossible, but the cost had been high. Blaze's injuries were a reminder of how close they had come to failure. The journey back to the surface was slow and exhausting. The path they had taken earlier was now partially blocked by debris from the collapsing hive, forcing them to find alternate routes. Shadow led the way, his keen senses guiding them through the dark tunnels. Every step felt heavier than the last, not just because of physical fatigue, but also because of the weight of what they had endured. When they finally emerged into the open air, the contrast was striking. Above them, the twin suns cast a pale light over the desolate landscape. The smoke-filled skies were beginning to clear, revealing glimpses of blue beyond the haze. It was a small sign of hope, a promise that the planet might heal in time. KL and a group of Veylan survivors greeted them outside the settlement. Their expressions shifted from worry to disbelief as they saw the battered humans and sentinels returning. Kale stepped forward, his shimmering form radiating gratitude. "You have done the impossible," he said, his voice trembling. "Our world owes you everything," Ethan shook his head modestly. "It wasn't just us. Your people gave us the strength to keep going when things looked hopeless." He gestured toward Shadow and Blaze, who lay unconscious on the stretcher. "And these creatures, they're the real heroes." Rachel translated Ethan's words for Kale, explaining the role the Sentinels had played in defeating the Skarn. Kale listened intently, his eyes widening in amazement. "Such power, such loyalty," he murmured. "Are they truly creations of your kind?" "Yes," Rachel replied. "They were designed to protect us, but today they protected you too." Kale bowed deeply, a gesture of profound respect. "Then, we are forever in your debt. Please allow us to assist you in any way we can." With the immediate threat gone, the team focused on stabilizing Blaze and preparing for the return journey to Earth. The Valens offered their aid, providing medical equipment and supplies to help care for the injured Sentinel. Rachel worked tirelessly alongside Alex, monitoring Blaze's vital signs and administering treatments to speed his recovery. Slowly but surely, the fiery glow returned to his eyes, and his breathing steadied. Meanwhile, Ethan and Mia coordinated with Kyle to gather information about the Skarn invasion. They wanted to understand how the creatures had appeared in the Valand system and whether they posed a threat to other civilizations. Kale explained that the Skarn had arrived unexpectedly, emerging from a rift in space-time. No one knew where they had come from or why they sought only destruction, but their presence had left scars that would take generations to heal. "This rift, it's closed now?" Ethan asked, concern etched on his face. Kale nodded. "Yes, the collapse of the hive sealed it. But we must remain vigilant. If another opens, we may not survive." Ethereal promised to share their findings with Earth scientists, hoping that humanity could learn from the Valand's ordeal and prepare for future threats. In return, Kale expressed interest in learning more about human technology and culture, seeing it as an opportunity to rebuild ties between their worlds. As days passed, the bond between the humans and the Valons grew stronger. The survivors shared stories of their struggles, painting a picture of a once thriving civilization reduced to ruins. Rachel listened intently, moved by their resilience despite unimaginable loss. She realized that this mission wasn't just about saving lives, it was about forging connections across the stars. Finally, the day came for the Odyssey to depart. Blaze had recovered enough to walk on his own, though his movements were slower than usual. Shadow prowled around the ship, sniffing the crates that had carried him to this distant world. The Sentinels seemed restless, perhaps sensing the end of their mission, or maybe just eager to return home. Before boarding the ship, Ethan addressed Kale and the gathered Valans. "This isn't goodbye," he said firmly. "We'll stay in contact, and if you ever need our help again, we'll be there. You're not alone anymore." Kale placed a hand over his chest, a gesture of deep gratitude. "Thank you, Commander Hayes. May your journey bring you safely home." With those words, the crew boarded the Odyssey and began the long voyage back to Earth. As the ship lifted off, the Valans watched from below, their faces illuminated by the fading glow of their twin suns. For the first time in years, hope burned brightly in their hearts. Inside the Odyssey, the mood was subdued yet hopeful. Everyone was exhausted, physically and emotionally drained from the challenges they had faced. But there was also a sense of accomplishment, a quiet pride in knowing they had made a difference. Rachel sat by a window, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. Her mind wandered to the possibilities ahead. Humanity had taken its first steps into the galactic community, answering a cry for help with courage and determination. What other adventures awaited them? What other alliances could they forge? Alex joined her after a while, carrying 2 cups of steaming tea. "Here," he said, handing her one. "Thought you might need this." Rachel smiled gratefully. "Thanks. I was just thinking. This changes everything, doesn't it?" Alex nodded. "Yeah, it does. We've shown the universe that we're capable of more than just surviving. We're capable of helping others. That's something worth celebrating." In the cockpit, Mia guided the Odyssey through the vastness of space, her focus unwavering. She glanced at the navigation console where Earth's coordinates blinked steadily. Home was still far away, but the thought of returning filled her with warmth. Behind her, Ethan stood silently, his arms crossed as he gazed out at the stars. For all the dangers they had faced, he couldn't help but feel grateful for the experience. It had tested them, pushed them to their limits, and ultimately revealed their true potential. The Sentinels rested in the cargo bay, their powerful forms curled up as they slept. Even in repose, they radiated strength and purpose. They were living, proof of humanity's ingenuity and its capacity for compassion. Without them, the mission would have failed. With them, humanity had achieved the impossible. As the Odyssey sped through the cosmos, the crew allowed themselves a moment of reflection. They had answered a call for help, risking everything to save a species they had never met. Along the way, they had discovered new allies, faced unimaginable dangers, and proven that even the smallest actions could have profound consequences. Now, as they journeyed home, they carried with them not just memories of victory, but also the knowledge that they were part of something greater than themselves. For the first time in history, humanity had stepped onto the galactic stage, not as conquerors or colonizers, but as protectors. And though the road ahead would undoubtedly be fraught with challenges, they faced it with hope, determination, and the unshakable belief that they could shape a better future. For themselves, for the Valans, and for all who shared the stars. The journey back to Earth was quieter than the trip to the Valan system had been. The excitement and tension of their mission were replaced by a sense of reflection. The crew of the Odyssey spent much of their time resting, repairing equipment, and discussing what they had experienced. For all of them, it was impossible not to think about how much had changed, not just for themselves, but for humanity as a whole. Mia Dawson spent hours in the cockpit, guiding the ship through the vastness of space. Though her hands moved confidently, over the controls her mind often wandered. She thought about the Valans, their resilience, their gratitude, and the hope that had returned to their eyes after the Skarn were defeated. She also thought about Blaze, the fiery sentinel who had nearly given his life to save them all. His injuries had healed, but Mia knew he would always carry scars from the battle. In some ways, so would she. Rachel Monroe sat in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. Her thoughts drifted between the scientific discoveries they had made and the emotional impact of their mission. The Skarn had been unlike anything she had ever studied. Part machine, part organism, and entirely deadly. Yet even more fascinating was the bond that had formed between humans and Valans. Two species from opposite ends of the galaxy had come together in a moment of crisis, proving that cooperation could transcend differences. Rachel wondered if this was just the beginning, if humanity might one day form alliances with countless other civilizations. Alex Carter stayed busy ensuring the ship's systems ran smoothly. He worked methodically, checking readings and running diagnostics, but his mind wasn't fully on the task. Instead, he kept replaying moments from the mission, the battles, the sacrifices, and the small victories that had added up to success. He felt proud of what they had accomplished, but he also knew that returning to Earth meant facing new challenges. How would humanity react to their story? Would people see the mission as a triumph, or as a warning of dangers lurking beyond the stars? Commander Ethan Hayes walked the corridors of the Odyssey, checking in with his team and making sure everyone was holding up well. He didn't say much during these visits. Instead, he listened. Each member of the crew had their own way of processing what they had been through, and Ethan respected that. But he couldn't help but feel a weight settling over him. Leading the mission had been the greatest challenge of his life, and now that it was over, he wasn't sure what came next. Still, he reminded himself of the importance of their work. They had proven that humanity could rise to meet the unknown, and that was something worth carrying forward. As Earth grew closer, the crew began preparing for their return. They reviewed their findings, organizing data and samples to present to the Global Space Command Center. Rachel compiled detailed reports on the Skarn, their hive structure, and the Queen's biology. Alex documented the performance of the Sentinels, noting areas where they excelled and where improvements could be made. Mia plotted their landing trajectory, ensuring a smooth descent into Earth's atmosphere, and Ethan prepared to address the United Nations Space Council, knowing that their mission would shape humanity's future in space exploration. When the Odyssey finally touched down at the command center, a crowd had gathered to welcome them home. Reporters jostled for position, cameras flashed, and cheers erupted as the crew stepped off the ship. Shadow and Blaze stood nearby, their massive forms drawing gasps of awe from the spectators. Despite their exhaustion, the team managed smiles as they greeted the crowd. It was clear that their mission had captured the world's attention. and its imagination. Inside the command center, Ethan delivered a report to the council outlining every step of their journey. He spoke of the Veyland's plight, the ferocity of the Skarn, and the bravery of both his team and the Sentinels. "We went into the unknown, not knowing what we would find," he said, his voice steady. "But we came back, knowing that humanity is capable of greatness. We answered a call for help, and we proved that we belong among the stars." His words were met with applause, but Ethan knew the real work was just beginning. The council discussed the implications of the mission, debating how best to use the knowledge gained from their encounter with the Skarn. Some argued for increased funding for space exploration, while others called for stronger defenses against potential threats. Rachel presented her research, emphasizing the need for continued study of alien ecosystems and technologies. "The universe is vast," she said, "and we've only scratched the surface. If we want to thrive out there, we need to understand it." In the weeks that followed, the crew of the Odyssey became symbols of hope and progress. Their faces appeared on news broadcasts, in magazines, and even on billboards. Children wrote letters thanking them for their bravery, while scientists reached out to collaborate on future projects. The Sentinels, too, gained fame, celebrated as living embodiments of humanity's ingenuity and determination. For Ethan, the newfound attention was bittersweet. He appreciated the recognition but missed the simplicity of life aboard the Odyssey. He spent his free time visiting Blaze, who had fully recovered and now roamed the facility grounds under careful supervision. Shadow joined them occasionally, his golden eyes watching curiously as Ethan spoke quietly to the reptilian creature. "You did good," he told Blaze one afternoon, scratching behind his scaly neck. "Real good." Rachel threw herself into her work, analyzing samples brought back from the Veyland system. She discovered traces of organic material within the Skarn's remains, suggesting they might have originated as a biological species before evolving or being altered into their current form. This revelation raised more questions than answers, fueling debates about the ethics of genetic engineering and the potential risks of tampering with nature. Rachel published her findings, sparking discussions across the globe. Alex returned to his role at the command center, overseeing upgrades to the Odyssey and other ships. He advocated for improved safety measures and better training programs, determined to ensure that future missions would be as successful as theirs had been. His efforts earned him promotions, but he remained humble, crediting his team for their hard work and dedication. Mia, meanwhile, found herself drawn back to the cockpit. Flying the Odyssey had been the most exhilarating experience of her life, and she couldn't imagine doing anything else. When offered the chance to lead another mission, she accepted without hesitation. "There's still so much out there," she told Ethan when he asked why she wanted to go again. "I want to see it all." As months turned into years, the legacy of the Odyssey's mission continued to grow. Humanity's relationship with the Veylons flourished, leading to exchanges of knowledge, technology, and culture. The two species learned from each other, forging a partnership built on mutual respect and trust. Together, they monitored the rifts in space-time that had allowed the Skarn to invade, working to prevent similar disasters in the future. Back on Earth, the Sentinels became icons of strength and courage. New generations of the creatures were bred and trained, their instincts honed to perfection. They accompanied astronauts on missions to distant planets, protected colonies on hostile worlds, and stood ready to defend humanity whenever needed. Though fearsome, they were also seen as guardians, symbols of the balance between power and responsibility. Ethan eventually retired from active duty, choosing to mentor young recruits instead. He shared stories of his adventures, passing on lessons learned from the challenges he and his team had faced. "The universe is full of wonders and dangers," he often said. "But if you approach it with an open heart and a strong will, you can achieve anything." Rachel continued her research, becoming one of the foremost experts on extraterrestrial life. Her work inspired countless others to pursue careers in science, and her name became synonymous with discovery. Alex rose through the ranks of the command center, shaping policies that guided humanity's expansion into space. And Mia flew farther and farther from Earth, exploring corners of the galaxy few had ever seen. Years later, when asked about the mission that had changed everything, Ethan smiled. It wasn't just about saving the Valons, he said. It was about showing ourselves and the universe that we're ready to explore, to learn, and to stand up for what's right. That's what makes us human. And so the story of the Odyssey's crew became legend, a tale of courage, sacrifice, and the unyielding spirit of exploration. It reminded humanity that even in the face of overwhelming odds, they could rise to the occasion. With determination and unity, they had stepped onto the galactic stage, and they were just getting started. The years passed, and the impact of the Odyssey's mission continued to ripple across Earth and beyond. Humanity had taken its first steps into the galactic community, proving that it was capable of more than just surviving. It could thrive. But with every new discovery came fresh challenges, forcing people to adapt and grow in ways they never imagined. Ethan Hayes, now retired from active duty, spent his days mentoring young recruits at the Global Space Command Center. His office was filled with mementos from the mission, photos of the crew, a scale model of the Odyssey, and even a small carving gifted to him by Kale, the Valen leader. Ethan cherished these items, not because they reminded him of his own achievements, but because they symbolized what humanity could accomplish when it worked together. One afternoon, as Ethan sat reviewing training manuals, a knock came at his door. "Come in," he called, looking up to see a young man standing nervously in the doorway. The recruit introduced himself as Daniel, one of the newest members of the program. "Sir, I was hoping you could tell me more about the Sentinels," he said, his voice tinged with admiration. "How do you train them? How do you trust them?" Ethan leaned back in his chair, a faint smile crossing his face. "Trust isn't something you give freely," he replied. "It's earned. The Sentinels are powerful, yes, but they're also intelligent. They respond to care and respect. Treat them well and they'll protect you no matter what." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "Do you think we'll ever need them again? For another mission like the one to Vela?" Ethan sighed, his expression turning serious. "I hope not. But if we do, we'll be ready. That's why we train. Why we prepare. Because out there—" He gestured toward the window, where stars twinkled faintly in the distance. "Anything can happen." Meanwhile, Rachel Monroe had become a household name. Her research on extraterrestrial life had opened doors to new fields of study, inspiring scientists around the world to explore the mysteries of the cosmos. She divided her time between lecturing at universities and working in labs, analyzing samples brought back from distant planets. One day, while examining fragments of an alien artifact, she made a startling discovery. A pattern etched into the material that resembled ancient Earth symbols. "This is incredible," she whispered to herself, her hands trembling slightly, as she adjusted the microscope. Could it be possible that humans shared a connection with other species across the galaxy? The implications were staggering. If true, it meant humanity wasn't alone, not just physically, but culturally and intellectually. Rachel knew this finding would spark debates and raise questions about the origins of life itself. For now, though, she kept her excitement contained, focusing on verifying her results before sharing them with the world. Alex Carter remained a vital part of the command center, overseeing upgrades to ships and equipment. Under his leadership, new technologies were developed to enhance safety and efficiency during space missions. One such innovation was a portable shield generator designed to protect astronauts from hostile environments. It was lightweight, easy to deploy and capable of withstanding extreme conditions, perfect for future expeditions into uncharted territory. But Alex's work wasn't without its challenges. Funding was always tight, and political tensions sometimes threatened to derail progress. Still, he persevered, driven by the belief that humanity's survival depended on its ability to adapt and innovate. "We can't afford to stand still," he often told his team. "If we do, we risk being left behind." Mia Dawson, meanwhile, had become a legend among pilots. Her skill and daring had earned her a reputation as one of the best in the business. After completing several successful missions, she was given command of a new starship, the Horizon. Sleek and advanced, the Horizon was built for long-distance travel, equipped with cutting-edge navigation systems and reinforced hulls. Its maiden voyage was set to take it farther from Earth than any ship had gone before, as Mia prepared for the journey. She couldn't help but feel a sense of déjà vu. Like the Odyssey, the Horizon carried sentinels in its cargo bay, ready to assist in case of danger. But unlike the previous mission, this one wasn't focused on rescue or defense. It was purely exploratory. "Out there," Mia said to her crew during a pre-flight briefing, "we'll find things no one has ever seen. Things that will change how we think about the universe and ourselves." The launch of the Horizon marked a new chapter in humanity's story. As the ship disappeared into the stars, millions watched live broadcasts, their hearts swelling with pride and curiosity. For the first time, humanity wasn't reacting to threats or answering calls for help. It was venturing outward with purpose, seeking knowledge and understanding. Back on Earth, the bond between humans and Valens grew stronger. Regular communication allowed the two species to share ideas, solve problems, and celebrate milestones together. Kyle, the Valen leader, visited Earth twice, marveling at its diversity and resilience. In return, human delegations traveled to the Valan homeworld, offering aid in rebuilding efforts and learning about their culture. One evening, during a joint celebration marking the anniversary of the Skarn's defeat, Kale addressed the gathered crowd. "When we sent our plea for help, we did not know who or what would answer," he said, his shimmering form glowing softly under the lights. "But you came, not as conquerors or strangers, but as friends. Because of you, my people have hope again. And because of you, we have learned that unity is strength." His words resonated deeply, reminding everyone present of the power of collaboration. The alliance between humans and Valans served as a model for future relationships with other civilizations. As humanity reached out to new species, it did so with humility and respect, recognizing that cooperation was key to survival in the vastness of space. Despite the progress, not everything was perfect. Some feared the unknown dangers lurking beyond Earth's borders, while others worried about the ethical implications of expanding into inhabited worlds. Debates raged in governments and scientific communities, balancing ambition with caution. Yet through it all, humanity pressed forward, guided by the lessons learned from the Odyssey's mission. Years later, when asked about the legacy of their journey, Rachel summed it up simply: "We showed that compassion and courage go hand in hand. When someone calls for help, you answer. And when you step into the unknown, you bring your best self." For Ethan, the mission represented something even deeper. "It's not just about us," he said during an interview. "It's about leaving a mark, a positive one. We proved that humanity can rise to the occasion, that we're capable of greatness. Now it's up to us to keep building on that foundation." And so the story of the Odyssey lived on, not just as a tale of heroism, but as a reminder of humanity's potential. With each new discovery, each new alliance, and each new challenge faced, the legacy of that first mission grew stronger. Humanity had stepped onto the galactic stage, and though the road ahead was uncertain, one thing was clear: they were ready to face whatever came next.